Hello, look what I just bought. It's an electric wheelchair. I've been keeping an eye out for one of these on Trade Me that wasn't working because the ones that are working seem to be quite expensive, a lot more expensive than I'd thought. But fortunately this one, although it's not working, apparently it's only the batteries that are the problem, but it's been sitting around for 6 or 7 years, so there could be other issues as well. So I'm hoping that most of it is in working condition. The reason I got this is, as usual, I don't really have any good reason to buy something like this, but I've been using this radio control car to drive around and do experiments with radio range tests and stuff like that, and just generally having fun driving around FPV. But where I live at the moment, it's pretty rough conditions for driving a car with little wheels like that. Those are about 12 centimeters in diameter, and they do okay, but when you get to sort of long grass, even something like that is probably about the limit for what this car can do. So I thought it would be good to have something that can basically just go anywhere on the farm. Well, it won't be able to drive through gates, but apart from going through gates, it should just be able to handle any situation it encounters on this whole farm. It should be able to get around. That's the plan. So that's going to require something with a bit more power, and that's where the wheelchair comes in. And I've also sort of thought about making a robot lawnmower. That was part of the thing that I was thinking about when I was, considering buying one of these things. But to be honest, I don't think I can really be bothered hooking up a lawnmower and getting it to work properly. And you still got to control it to mow the lawns and everything. But as you can see, I don't really mow the lawns much anyway, so not a big deal. So I think what I'll do is I'll just set it up as just a fun thing to drive around, and maybe make it autonomous in some way using GPS to maybe, say, get it to drive out along this road and then hit a return to home button and have it follow some breadcrumbs, so to speak, to come back along the road instead of just trying to come directly back, and also do some radio range tests and just general FPV driving around and having fun. So that's the plan. And if everything goes well, I might actually make a different kind of a chassis, like a cool tracked, tank-looking chassis with caterpillar tracks, and hopefully make it go through all the muddy patches on the roads here without any problems. So in general, I'd like it to be really rugged and hopefully completely waterproof, so that it could just sit out in the rain all day without any problems. Anyway, you probably want to have a little bit of a look at it. Now, you'll have to excuse me if I sound a little bit uneducated on this as I go and look at the parts, because this is the first time I'm looking at it myself in detail. I just pulled it out of the car and plonked it down here and started recording. So there's a seat piece, which is actually very comfortable. It's quite good for kneeling on while I'm working. Let's start with this. This is the main part, and we have a huge big DC motor on each side. Looks like about 20 centimeters long by probably about 12 centimeters in diameter, and it's geared down. Oh, let's look at the other one. It's geared down by quite a lot there in that gearbox before it goes to the wheel. So obviously you're not getting 3200 RPM on these wheels. You're getting a much lower speed, much higher torque output there. Oh, and before I go further, the number one thing that I was amazed at when I got this, it is heavy. I mean, it is really, really heavy. I could not believe how heavy it was. I had to detach the top part from this part and detach the batteries as well, just to even get close to being able to pick it up and put it in the car. It would have been absolutely impossible to do that with all of these three sections together. But in a way that's quite encouraging, because it means that it's going to have plenty of power to get through whatever I'm going to try and put it through, because it had to move all that weight, potentially up slopes and everything, with a person sitting on it. So it should have more than enough power to do what I'm going to ask of it, because it's going to be mostly unloaded, and I won't be using those big heavy lead batteries. I'll most likely be using lipos. Anyway, on with the inspection. There's a sort of a disengagement here, so if I put that up into drive, now I can't turn this because it's engaging the motor's engaging the wheels, but when I push this down it sort of disengages it so that it can be moved, although it is still very heavy. Not sure if that's going to be useful. Might be, if I need to push my tank around a little bit, might need to be able to disengage that. Over here we have, this is where the power comes in for the batteries. Down here we have ESC, I'm not sure what this is, but under there we have an ESC, or I guess technically that must be two ESCs because it has to control each motor separately in order to turn around. Down here we have a bunch of things, I'm not really sure what they are. What the hell is this? I mean, I have no idea what that is, but I will hopefully figure it out. This piece looks like it just brings a whole lot of power connections together and does nothing else. There was a cable here that I cut just to sort of speed along the process of getting it dismantled. It's just a couple of wires, it won't be too hard to fix. And this went to a little small cylinder underneath the seat here, which I'm thinking, there it is, that little cylinder there, I think it might be a tilt sensor. So just in case you want to tilt your chair back too far and you're going to fall over, maybe it can try and prevent that or something. I'm not sure what else that would be. It's just a cylinder with nothing else to look at. While we're here though, we can see another cylinder under there, and it turns out that this chair actually has a automated or a motorized leaning back feature, and under this little canvas cover there is another motor there. See some specs, everything's running on 24 volts DC, and this is also geared down quite a bit, I would imagine. Maybe even, this is probably a worm drive perhaps, and it's running, so it's going to be pushing this. No, would that be? Oh well, we'll figure this out later, but that could perhaps be useful for tilting the machine gun or something like that. Whatever, I may find a use for it, I don't know. Okay, so there's not much else to look at on there. This other wire goes over to here. Now I did not want to cut that one because it's probably a little bit trickier to fix, but that goes to this very smooth feeling joystick, which is one thing that I wanted to keep. Might come in handy. And there's quite a nice feeling, very high quality switches here. That one, that's just a push button, and then there's a variable resistance thing here for speed. So it looks like you can vary the speed, and well, it's not incremental, it's like smoothly adjustable. There's not any specific set. It doesn't click, that's what I'm trying to say. So yeah, that'll be interesting. Hope that part of it works. Over here we have some leg pieces which we don't need. Now the batteries, turns out the batteries are just plain old car batteries really, as far as I can tell. And they hook together into that thing. They're 12 volts, but this thing is putting them into series, isn't it? Yeah. And there's looks like an 80 amp fuse in there, just in case something goes wrong. And they have this quite neat sort of a attachment system. So those big metal rods are these are just for guidance, and they go in there, but the actual power is coming out here. And so they slot together like that, and then your 12 volts becomes 24 volts. And then that one just goes into the piece that we looked at before on the front there. So those batteries are probably going to be stuffed, but I will at least have a quick check and see if maybe I can do something about using them, but I'm not really worried about it. I mean, that was what I was expecting when I bought it, is that they're not going to be working. And the other thing that I got with this was, geez, this is heavy too. Like, everything's heavy on this. Is a battery charger. It's a pretty simple affair. It's basically it's like a car battery charger really, except it's 24 volts, so it's going to be able to charge those two car batteries in series. And it has a plug there. So if I go with LiPo batteries, I'm not going to be using that, I guess. And it's not very useful for charging my car battery with either, because it's 24 volts. So may end up just not actually using that at all, unless I decide to use lead acid batteries for my robo tank. Yeah, but probably, yeah, it's a pity because it looks like quite a nice charger, so maybe I could just sell that. We'll see. Anyway, so that's where I'm at the moment. I don't know very much about it, but I will look into things a little bit further. And of course, part of the main job is going to be to figure out what kind of signals are going along in this wire from the controller. So I'll have to get the oscilloscope on there maybe and figure out what it's doing, and maybe see if I can override that or emulate it, you know, so that my Arduino or whatever I decide to use with this can give those same signals to the ESCs. I'll probably have to take this off and have a look at those ESCs too, because that would be kind of interesting, won't it? The bottom of the control thingy has these two plugs on it. I'm not really sure what they're for. And on the top of that control panel thing there is the battery jack, or the battery charger connection. And this thing, which looks very interesting, looks like a bunch of pins in there that could be connected to something perhaps. I wonder if it's sort of a diagnostic port where you could hook something up and talk to the controller in some way. That would make life easier if that's what it is. So that's all I have for now. Sorry it wasn't very informative, but I think I'll just leave it there. If anybody has any cool tips about this kind of stuff, or in particular how maybe lead acid batteries that have been sitting around for 6 or 7 years could perhaps be resurrected, even just a little bit, it might be helpful while I'm testing to be able to use those, even if I don't use them, you know, for the actual thing in the end. If they just held a little bit of charge, it might be handy. Anyway, that's all for now. Thanks for watching.